I got my COVID vaccine 2 days ago,
How was
and
it?
the vaccine itself was perfectly fine. I walked in extraordinarily hot weather through Denver, Colorado, to the ballpark, and there's the vaccine station set up over there. Pretty much just rocked up, and they popped one in my arm, and because I've got a shellfish allergy, they wanted to just monitor me for like 15-20 minutes to make sure that I didn't have an anaphylactic reaction. And then I went back to my hostel, and I had a beer with some of the people over there, and I went to sleep. And then at 3 o'clock in the morning, I woke up shaking and sweating and just feeling absolutely awful, and I couldn't sleep at all. So at like 5 o'clock, I woke up. Oh, sorry, I got out of bed and I took a shower, and then I had to get on a train, and it was hot, and the train was delayed by an hour and a half. And then when I was finally on the train, this is yesterday, I was like, my entire body was sore. I had a headache. I felt a bit nauseous, and the train was going at only 10 miles per hour because of the heat. The tracks were slightly warped, so they weren't allowed to travel very fast. So what was supposed to be a 4-hour train ride was an 8-hour train ride. And there was this dude next to me who kept trying to try and talk to me, and I didn't have the energy for it. I was just like, I was like this close to having a cry on the train. But I am now feeling great. I've had a good night's sleep. So it's just one day vaccine that it feels quite shit. But yeah, I'm alive, and in Aspen, Colorado. So up in the ski mountains, but middle of summer.
Yeah, so there's no snow, right?
There actually is. We drove past. So what they do is they have a process of like taking snow down from a higher part of the mountain and moving it down, and then taking care of it. So essentially just making sure that it gets compacted and clumped together so people can ski on it. And it broke my brain a little bit, because I'm like, it's 36 degrees Celsius outside and there's snow right over there and people are skiing on it. What is happening?
They must have like these huge like chillers or what? Like
no, nothing like that.
Prevent melting, like.
So it turns out that snow is actually, it takes a lot of energy to melt because it's so reflective. And at night it's still pretty, like, it's not cold here at night right now, but it's not hot. So during the night it sort of settles, and then during the day it actually takes a lot of energy to melt, and it's not going to last for very long, but it's there. And then by preserving it, they kind of like clump it together so that it's got, so it keeps itself cool, just in lieu of the fact that it's next to more snow.
Yeah, I guess just the top layer would like melt off, right? And the rest, if it's compacted enough, maybe not. And then where are you working now?
So I'm currently at the W Hotel in Aspen. I'm not staying in this hotel. I'm just using the Wi-Fi. And it's they've got some comfortable seating. There's a glass fire pit over there, so there's a whole bunch of propane that burns out of there. So this is a ski town, right? So they need to make sure they can stay warm in winter. And for the next week or so, I'm just going to be working out of coffee shops around here, maybe out of Tanner's house. If I come back up to Aspen, probably out of here, the W Hotel.
I guess during the winter it's used as like a party spot, right? Like
exactly.
I remember watching some of those like old school movies like Hot Tub Time Machine and stuff like that, where it's like party village in Aspen, right?
Yeah, so Aspen is like it's very expensive over here because it's kind of like Franschhoek in South Africa, where it's expensive and bougie, but it's also kind of hipster, and it's got a lot of like very active people. So there's like mountain biking around the area, and obviously you're skiing and you're rock climbing and you're paddling. So fairly interesting.
And how are you hoping to balance it out? Like obviously you've got the work and you've got the need to go out and explore and experience the world, right?
So I'm fairly practiced at this, considering I've been working remotely for the past, say, 4 years, or more, 4.5 years. So 3 of them at Get My Boat with a official job, and then the past 1.5 years working for myself and my company. And I'm glad that it started out with me having to work for a company where I was an employee first, because I had to cultivate that ability to work consistently while I was traveling. Whereas I think if I had started by being self-employed, it would have been a lot harder to cultivate it, because you don't actually have to.
Yeah, you're not forced to by a deadline or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, so working remotely it can be a lot of fun, but it does take a lot of like self-discipline. I mean, you know all about that. You've been essentially working remotely in South Africa for the past 6 months, and we've been mostly chilling together at co-working spaces. But every now and then a good coffee shop or a Airbnb or something works quite well. I think that the self-discipline is something that I'm having to lean on fairly heavily now that I'm working alone. It's like, okay, from 9 until at least 2 o'clock, it's going to be like heads down time. And then
exactly,
early afternoon.
So I found myself, I feel like I'm a bit of a creature of habit, right? Because like I thought I'd also be like moving around quite a lot when I came down here. Maybe not during the lockdowns in the UK, because you kind of just have to stay at home. So what I realized there is that I really hate just working from home, just not having that disconnect. So I like being here, I've got the co-working space, but I also pretty much always go to the same one. So I don't know if it's something that I can't be bothered to decide. So I just decide to just go to that one, because it's like less decisions in your day.
Yeah. And you know the Wi-Fi is good.
And I know the Wi-Fi is good. So it's kind of a predictable experience. And that's part of like the worry, right? Because you like in the role that I do is I talk to customers quite a lot. I speak to, my team back in the UK. I'm speaking to people all over. Like, I need to have good internet, right?
Yeah.
And whereas before I used to kind of worry a little bit about it, because I was like worrying if I would get to like a cafe on time. Now that I've got that spot, it kind of is my like anchor, so I can always go there if I need to. And I find myself starting to wander a little bit more. So like,
I hear you. I think
like the other day when I was like chilling outside the bar on that little table having a call, so I wasn't too worried about that. But it also depends on the type of meeting. I wouldn't do that for like a really important meeting.
Yeah, I hear you. I found even when I'm let's take for instance doing a like full-fledged travel, so like going to a different town every 1 or 2 weeks, is I will generally find that one space that I go to and like become a regular there for that week. So rock up there in the morning, be like, bonjour, Guillaume, one just my black Americano, please, and then get into the workday at least for the first half of the day there, and then so it's like, also my base is definitely a useful thing to have. I'd say that was a lot more I was a lot more like that when I was working for a company where I had more strict like work hours, and I also had much more consistent like check-ins with other people, whereas currently I just check in 3 times a week with the person who runs the social media and blog for Just Sketch Me, and that's been good. It's been a nice consistent thing, but it's not as imperative that it's it's not like one of those dev calls where there's 7 people on the call and you need to like riddle out some stuff, or a sales call like what you're doing, or a solutions architect call.
and I guess like you need to like have that kind of ambition inside of you to continuously want to build, so that you don't taper off into like just sitting
Yeah, one of the things that I realized a while back is that when it comes down to it, it's yes, things do need to be engaging, and if they're not engaging for too long a time, then you need to figure something out. But sometimes you also just have to be comfortable with going and doing something even though you're not motivated to do it, right? It's not like, oh, I'm inspired to do this right now, because that inspiration fluctuates, and you still have to get stuff done. So it's just about sitting down and doing it, even if you're not really feeling it. And one of the is that I did that with Get Boats is I would, well, like the first thing that I need to do there, right? It's like, okay, I need to do is I just need to sit down and I need to just spin up the local server that I'm working on, and open up my email, open up the Slack, open up GitHub, and once I've got all of those things open, I can't not do anything. Like I know, like setting up all the services and opening up the GitHub, it's super easy to do, right? I'm not daunted by it. But then once they're all open, I'm not going to sit there and be like, all right, that's done. Time to close my laptop. It's like, oh, okay, well, let me start working on an issue.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree. It's kind of the same as like habit forming. Like when you want to go to the gym, they say you must rather try and just go to the gym first, and then like once you're there, you're like, well, I might as well just do a workout. But the one thing that I wouldn't do that I've started to do recently is not open the emails first, because I find that kind of sucks you in. And maybe for you, it is like your currency in terms of like your work, because most of your communication is via support requests and via I guess you got Slack too. But one thing that I got into the habit of is, one other person, maybe two, Simon as well.
Simon every now and then, yeah.
So like one of the things I was doing for quite a while this year is like opening with the emails, and then you immediately get distracted and you suddenly like doing like a kind of reactive mode rather than being like more active. So that's kind of what I've started doing in the last couple of weeks, is like leaving the emails till later in the day. But then again, like the emails are so boring, like sometimes I don't even read them. So there's downsides too, but like we still do quite a bit of communication via Slack. So
yeah,
if there's anything pressing, and it's more that like quadrant thinking of like urgent, important. So if it's urgent and important, you do it, and if it's not, you delegate, and all of those kind of decision frameworks.
Yeah, I hear you over there. Is that I find that I certainly have had to stop also opening up WhatsApp and Telegram on my computer as soon as I open up for work for the day, because then I'll spend like the first half of the day, the first like a half hour, 45 minutes of the day just like answering the messages that I have on Telegram, and then that starts chats with people, and off I go. And I certainly don't. I used to open up Hacker News, which is just a news aggregator for a bunch of tech-related news at the beginning of the day, every day, and then I would spend the first couple of hours like reading articles and everything. Terrible for productivity.
Terrible.
And I don't do that anymore.
So do you think it's the future? Is it the future? Is remote working? Are we all going to be remote and we're never going to have offices again?
No, I'd say that there's always going to be a place for in-person work. Don't misunderstand. I think that remote work is great, right? I love working remotely. I would like the option of working, part on, part off. Just because it's really nice to be around co-workers, sharing ideas, bouncing ideas off of each other, and those sort of like coincidental interactions that leads to you building better things, developing better relationships with your co-workers. I firmly believe that people do work better together when they're co-located. But when it comes to employee satisfaction and work-life balance, completely the other way around is like remote working is, you don't commute, you work in a place that is more conducive to the work that you're doing, that works well for you. You might also be able to like work at times that are more conducive to work for you. But I'd say that there's always going to be a space for co-located working.
Yeah, exactly. And like there's like been an announcement for Amazon that we can go back from like September and do 3 days a week. So it's going to be quite interesting. But what I also, in like listening about the topic and like remote working, right? It's kind of like an age thing too. You know, we're more likely as kind of younger people in the tech industry, we're going to be more interested in staying at work and having that sort of longer working hours and like more collaboration. But as you get older, like people with families and all of that, their priorities kind of shift away from like career building and like business building to more like family orientated stuff. So for them, I think it's more like it's more like an age or like a where you are in your life, right? You like you're not going to always want to remote work. Or you're going to want to remote work, but not for the right reasons.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like a backpacker's hostel, right? Is that when you're young, like being around other young people and like interacting with them is really exciting. But by the time you're, you know, a bit older, you're like, oof, going and living in a backpacker's hostel for a week or two sounds daunting. And I absolutely think so. It's like my job as a video game developer at Sea Monster. I really enjoyed working with the people who I was working with. I really enjoyed the space I was working in. Sometimes, or I enjoyed the work I was doing, but that wasn't like, there was some good work, there was some bad work. When I was working at Get My Boat, like I liked the people who I worked with, but I didn't know most of them. I guess the only person who I know really well from that work is Tanner, who's sitting right here.
Hey, Tanner.
And so I don't think I was ever as invested in the work community when I was working for Get My Boat as I was with Sea Monster. And I kind of miss that. I miss that proper collaborative feeling of being surrounded by your coworkers, just kind of grafting day in and day out. And I think it's because I'm still at that point in my life, right? I'm 28 years old. I still got like a bit of spunk and vigor in me. I don't have kids that I'm taking care of. I don't have a household that requires my time. But the reason that I did take on remote working is because I wanted to travel, and it's tough to travel when you're co-located.
Yeah. And it's also like, I think there's an element of like trust that's built up. I mean, you for your coworkers, you're all like effectively in the trenches, and you feel like that camaraderie. But from like management point of view, it's becoming like a thing where they want to kind of manage people. So having people in the office kind of gives them an idea of what they're working on.
Yeah.
And there's this notion that maybe people who want to remote work maybe also shirking their jobs or not doing their jobs as effectively. So like, how I'm interested to know, like, I know with coding it's maybe a little bit easier because you can always check pull requests and like the commit history.
Yeah.
But in some of the more like not so well defined kind of measuring jobs, like how do we know that like so and so is actually working and not just spending time with his family?
Yeah, so that's actually a really good topic for discussion. Is I went from working remotely as a developer to now having a person who is doing something fuzzy, marketing, working for me remotely.
Yeah.
And it with Get My Boat, the way that we managed it was actually better than Sea Monster managed it, despite being co-located. Is we had a whole bunch of processes that we set up and refined over, multiple years that would allow us to plan effectively, despite us being asynchronous and remote. So when I went and I logged into my various accounts in the morning, I knew exactly what I was working on for that day. I didn't have to like shoot off an email or a Slack to someone else because they'd probably be asleep. Everything was there. So that's what that asynchronous, like that was very important for the asynchronicity is making sure you have all those processes so that people know what it is that they're doing and they have work on their plates and they don't have to dig for it. And we did that through, various things like our planning sessions at the beginning of the sprint, making sure that all the tasks were, predefined and ready for you to pick up, categorized correctly. And then also like, once you're finished with like this bit, you would open up a pull request, you would flag someone with it, you would put a couple of tags on it so that it's categorized correctly. And then, when they wake up and log online, they can go and they can review that pull request, go on with their work. With the marketing, with like trying to figure out how effectively I'm working with my marketing manager, I've taken a bit of learnings from that, but we also make sure to touch base via a video call 3 times per week, because some of the stuff needs to be like discussed and brainstormed about, whereas outside of planning on a coding as a developer, is you don't necessarily have to work with someone else. It's nice to work with someone else, but you can do it entirely in isolation. Whereas with Just Sketch Me's marketing is like, we need to decide how to build relationships, do some business development, what direction are we going to take with the brand image. So we do have sort of like tasks and processes like we have, like we had with development work, but and then also at the end of every day, Dante will just like pop a whole bunch of just a list of the things that he's worked on for the day, so that when we have the call the next day, I can take a look through that and be like, okay, let's talk about this. What are the plans for the next couple of days, and go from there. I don't know if it's the most effective way of working. I would have to test, do A/B testing on it. But I'm comfortable with it, and we're making progress, and he's happy and I'm happy. And I think that that's what's important for me, for my company right now.
Yeah, and it's also just it's like one person.
Yeah.
So it's
yeah,
easy
exactly.
to
One
tell.
person's easy.
But if you look at like a larger company, I can kind of understand, especially with like South Africa and the kind of older mindsets of bums on seats. You got to have like workers in the office on their computers.
So I will pose you a question: is that if you were let's say hypothetically running the accounting division at Deloitte, right? How would you, like, what kind of processes would you conceptually put in place to make sure that people were doing their work? Because it's not like planned and broken down quite like programming, and it's a much larger group of people.
I don't know. It depends. I think like the auditing field has its own like mechanisms, I guess. But that is the thing. You need, like, if you're having to do like these big accounting like related things, you maybe, I mean, I don't know the field, to be honest. I can barely like account for my own like well-being, but but I am sure there are kind of mechanisms. The hardest things are obviously like things that require some tangible skill. Like you'll never get rid of tradesmen, right?
Yeah.
Or tradeswomen.
They'll always be there, and
yeah, so they'll always have to like have like that can't be remote. So but I'm a big fan of hubs. So especially and we spoke about it before in terms of your commute. Like the commuting aspect, and having like a distance to work makes you like more sad. So the longer you commute, the like, especially in cars, like commuting in cars is like the worst. I kind of like the idea of hubs, where you can kind of have a work space, maybe like a WeWork or something like that, that's local, so you can have the option to meet up. But you still have the flexibility to work from wherever.
So if you were to start a company, this year, and let's say, for instance, grow from you and one other person to say 50 people. What would that look like for you? Let's take, for instance, you're running a web app
So I'd still be in favor of having like teams, like core teams. Like if there's like a core product, like that team being able to sit together for at least a couple of days, especially for development stages. Like I know one thing that I struggle with at the moment is things like whiteboarding, like coming up, like the ideation phase. Like just I don't have a tablet. I don't have like one of these like fancy Wacom's. So it's really about like that collaboration, and I feel like you need to have it. But also, once it gets to a certain size, you do have certain more fuzzy jobs that come in. Like you'll have salespeople that don't necessarily need to be in the office, as long as you have defined metrics and you have, as you said, like some sort of strong management where you can say like, well, these are the outcomes. And once you hit those outcomes, then it's fine, and you can go about your business.
Yeah, I completely agree with you over there. I'd say if I were to grow out a software company right now, I would definitely be located at least 2 days a week, with the ability to come and work at the office or the co-working space or whatever full time if you want.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, we got to get out of this mindset of as an employee, you're paid for your time. You're actually paid for your output. So if you can track that, and I think that's the kind of mind shift that we need to take, is that like some person who's like really good at their job and gets it done in half the time, he can do whatever he wants with the other half of his time. And that should not be any business of the company, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Rather
I
than
think
forcing him to stay a certain time limit. But I mean, you do get like the overachiever, or you get the people who are really passionate about their jobs, and they'll obviously do better because they getting double the output in the same amount of time.
Yeah, when I was working at Sea Monster, I felt like a lot of the time I was there unnecessarily, even though there wasn't work for me to do. I'm trying to remember this. There's a something syndrome of like, you have to be there even though you don't have anything to do, and you just sit around, and it actually feels quite shit and demotivating. Whereas if I'm working
is it presenteeism?
Presenteeism, that's exactly it. If I'm at home, I can close my laptop and go and make myself a cup of tea. Or if I'm at a coffee shop, I can close my laptop and order a cup of tea, or take a walk around, read a book. Whereas going and sitting on the couch and reading a book at work, at the office, is a bit of a foreign concept.
Yeah. And it's also like, it also relates to how your business is measuring those outputs too. Like I noticed working previously in support, you get very specific numbers that you have to hit in terms of like your metrics, right? And that was kind of good because you knew like once you hit your metrics, you pretty much can like, take the foot off the accelerator, do some other things. And now when I've moved to a more sales role, it's also like you kind of long for those like hard tangible metrics, because then you can like hit them, and then you don't have to worry about demotions. And although that doesn't happen where we work, but like I can imagine in general you have some guy at the end of the quarter or the end of the year is going to have to evaluate your performance. And if they're thinking, oh, this guy was never in the office, rather than what did he give for the business, what processes did he create, what value did he create, then it's going to have to be something different.
So another really important thing with remote working is making sure that you get the plug adapter for the country that you're visiting. And I'm currently in the United States, and I'm still running. My laptop hasn't been charged since South Africa, and I'm nearing the end of it. So we are actually going to have to cut this conversation slightly short. Otherwise, we might lose this recording. So
Yeah, I mean,
I think we've
that's
covered our bases quite well in, what's this been, half an hour so far?
Yeah, it's been about half an hour.
Okay.
I guess, yeah. So where you off to next? We could just close it
I'm
up.
Yeah, I'm gonna hang around here in the mountains for the next week or so. I'm gonna go to a hot spring over here, do a hike, maybe do some white water rafting, some mountain biking, and then potentially buy a junker and drive through to New York to see my brother, who's also gonna fly in to get the jab. What about
That's
yourself?
awesome.
Cape Town's a bit rainy right now, yeah?
It's very rainy and it's quite cold. And as you can see, it's like dark, which is why I'm probably not as switched on as usual. It's like just about 9:30 here. So yeah, this weekend I'm hoping to go for maybe do some mountain biking too. But also I'm gonna go for a hike, maybe over in Helderberg. So
All right, that sounds
that's
awesome,
going to be
man.
quite intense. I haven't hiked the Helderberg Mountain in a good couple of years. Once you're in Cape Town, you kind of just stick to Table Mountain.
Yeah.
So I'm quite excited to take on the Helderberg one more time.
Well, I hope it's lovely. I'm going to end this recording because I'm so close to the end of my battery that I've got anxiety about losing it. Let's. It's been awesome chatting to you.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to our next one.
Yeah. Thank you.